What would our world be like if the effective solution for resolution of cognitive dissonance could be found? The vastness of beneficial outcomes from the diminished suffering from this consistent mental impairment will be immeasurable, thanks to regained clarity. It will transform every part of our reality by restoring logic and bringing more happiness into personal lives. And the skill for resolving cognitive dissonance can help avoiding institutionalized self-defeat of the decision makers, as well as culture of moral atrocity patterns in the laws, policies, and standards of operation that cause avoidable suffering, including millions of preventable illnesses and deaths today and preventable suffering from birth defects of the future generations from the cumulative effects of left unmitigated toxicity. Considering such significant impact, all efforts of brain sciences should have been focused on finding the solution for this universal cause for the fast-approaching global threats. But instead, along with most of population, most of academia members are no exception. They too lack mere awareness of the problem, since the skills for self-reflection are not taught in schools. So, is there a hope for solving multitude of personal and collective problems in a logical way, by addressing them at the root of their psychological drivers? Such solution is especially urgent and existential new, when it comes to global threats caused by anthropogenic impacts. Needless to say, the key challenge is their intangible nature. That is the key reason for the difficulty to grasp the conflicting elements of cognitive dissonance that cannot be touched, nor examined visually. However, fortunately for the humankind, the tool for attaining the freedom from cognitive dissonance was created 3 centuries ago by genius humanity advocate Johann Sebastian Bach, revered for his composer's gift. But his excellence in creating visionary teaching scaffolding, that is evident of his mindset of neuroscientist, have been obscured by the tradition of political correctness. And it is yet to be experienced, appreciated and celebrated by many people, who can become beneficiaries of his invaluable tools for advancing brain function by banishing this powerful slave master of the mind. That is why, the new ebook by insightful author Rozalina Gutman, titled Paradox of Invisible Dissonance in Fugue Parody by J.S. Bach, is dedicated to bringing the spotlight to the deleted parts of his legacy of riveting genius. The author's unique perspective of master piano instructor allowed for her textbook-changing and rather sensational discoveries, thanks to her unique personal resonance to Bach's own duties of music instructor. Such influence on his compositional mindset of music instructor in the role of hands-on consciousness transformer had been largely amiss in Bach scholarship. Consequently, this ebook with the main focus on didactic update on the reviewed fugue parody also illuminated the need for rethinking of interpretation of his legacy that suffered from the significant distortions. The achievement of set by Bach learning objective for the emotional freedom from cognitive dissonance, that opens the gates for attaining higher human potential, is still paradoxically uncommon and unexpected for current school environments. And it was even much more daring to aim to such didactic goal during Bach's historical period and make the lessons engaging through the resonance to the authentic experiences with the use of musical humor, as the tool for optimizing learning process. But despite the lifelong persecution by resenting the change contemporaries, genius master music instructor Bach went on and never stopped his innovations. And one of them is uniquely designed tiny didactic maverick in the form of fugue parody. By creating effective music-based container, Bach used music to teach the skills of self-reflection and self-mastery for achieving cognitive clarity for solving the problems that would be otherwise hard to grasp and to address. He designed the tiny fugue in the unique form, allowing for music-based embodiment of the elements of cognitive dissonance, by giving the tangible form to the intangible feelings and thoughts with conflicting meaning. And this allowed to examine them separately and in interaction with each other. The process starts with self-reflection and awareness of self-defeat and harm, leading to acknowledgement of errors and opens the path to developing the ability to overcome resulting confusion. This uniquely designed by Bach didactic composition is excellent for fostering self-deprecating humor that allows for letting go of the burdening inertia of trauma and the warping perception through ill pride. And today's neuroscientists would be among the first to appreciate the achievement of the transformative effect of joy neurochemicals that facilitate music instinct. They serve as the incomparable ineffectiveness counterpoint to the mind paralysis and the freeze of logic, caused by fight-of-flight instinct. Bach's intuitive knowledge about how to harness such use of transformative power of music is the real treasure, evident of his remaining intellectual leadership of hands-on music instructor and an innovative catalyst of change. The subtitle of this unconventional publication states one of the key focuses of this publication, that is the didactic update. It guides the readers through rather paradoxical perception phenomenon of the significant discrepancies of various didactic aids with the score facts, related to defiantly employed dissonant sonorities in this fugue parody. They had been hidden in the plain sight and left paradoxically, undetected in most analysis publications and acclaimed recordings, despite being emboldened with syncopation and left with no resolution. Despite all odds, these devices used by composer to get attention made no difference even among acclaimed musicians. Instead of enjoying Bach's humor, such clashing cluster chords with rather unique connotations had been paradoxically left unrecognized. Consequently, this evidence revealed that many acclaimed, yet flawed polyphonic analysis books and labeled as iconic recordings cannot be used as the didactic aids for interpreting music of Bach. And such sobering lesson from Bach came with alarming message about the crisis of emotional repression among many musicians. And the fact that it had been also left unnoticed demands for the urgent intervention with proven intellectual leadership. And this score for Bach's lesson revealed that this widespread detachment with emotional reality is the result of entrainment of performers of music of Bach into limiting diversity of dynamics or even using no nuances at all. And as the direct result from such zombification, many musicians were forced to practice emotional repression. In fact, seemingly logical and yet manipulative term, historically informed performance standard was enforced by exam and audition requirements upon performers of Bach. And most of musicians never questioned its roots in the archaic tradition of misusing educational curriculum for indoctrination of the subjects of monarchy into obedience herd of the sheep. And music was one of such tools that also served this function during Bach's historical period. Needless to say, such pedagogical approach should have ceased along with the senseless and cruel regime of monarchy. And at the very least, the advocates and experts on health, safety and wellness of music teaching methods should have brought these performances standards for Bach in compliance with various studies on the link of emotional repression and serious health calamities. But since it has not occurred, in order to reduce personal and institutional liability, this ebook provides citations of a few of these helpful data that demands for the urgent action. And, fortunately, Bach's own score of fugue parody provides the remedy and can stop the spread of this virus-like collective blind spot, capable of causing cognitive failure of the skill of reading basic notation among acclaimed musicologists and recordings artists and millions of readers of their books and fans of their recordings. Readers gain clarity on the reasons why emboldened dynamics are the integral part of performing this piece that presumes the use of noticeable dynamic stresses on syncopated cluster chords in order to bring out their clashing sonority with sarcastic meaning. Upon guided with scaffolding examination of the provided analysis of the piece, that is mainly focused on the didactic update for left undetected dissonance sonorities, the readers will gain clear sense of the collective cognitive failure of misled by distortions musicians to practice zombification in music. But evidently, Bach created this and other compositions with just the contrary purpose of elevating emotional resonance and reawakening from zombification. Upon observation of this phenomenon, readers will regain the clarity on intended by Bach use of nuanced dynamics in this piece and the rest of his music. And in addition, readers will find fascinating exploration of the incredible possibility for applied use of complexity of texture of Bach's polyphonic masterpieces, that are able to provide the great resemblance to the complexity of the polyphonic multitasking of the human brain. And dynamically nuanced polyphony with increased depth of polyphonic perspective allows for fostering perceptual skills to deal with the complexity of interconnectedness of our universe, due to the vibrational nature of all matter at the subatomic particles level, as described by Einstein. The ebook enabled readers with the mapped ideas for using the piece as the superb tool for embodiment of the elements of cognitive dissonance. And resentment to change is a good example for applying fugue for releasing paralysis of action through interactive, fluidly moving texture that models shifts in emotional reality. However, there is another key prerequisite for allowing this fugue to serve as the applied tool and very effective container for reflection and resolution of cognitive dissonance. The fugue is designed as the didactic exercise for the student to achieve the emotional resonance to the composer's sense of humor, spelled out with notation. And in order to project it, the relevant to the satirical content bold dynamics have to be employed. Otherwise, the dissonance cannot be projected with clarity, since its emergence is designed by Bach to occur with the help of syncopated accents. That is why, the use of dynamics for underscoring emboldened with syncopation dissonant cluster chords plays the key, integral part in the task of projected intended for the piece sense of humor. Readers can learn details of such unique secrets of the trade, graciously shared in the analysis by the author Rozalina Gutman. In fact, this insightful explanation provides the answer to the root cause of the observed paradox of collective blind spot, involving millions of musicians. The shared cognitive failure was caused by the lack of this use of relevant bold dynamics, since musicians had been entrained into harmful practice of emotional repression in Bach's polyphony. And now, the result of this pathological practice can be witnessed by all. The author helps readers to understand intended by Bach lesson for his students on learning music-based self-reflection that the ingenuity of the kind teacher turned into happy and filled with self-deprecating humor experience. His lesson on building resilience to the inner force of maladaptive conformity, rooted in herd instinct, and capable of disabling auditory and visual senses, is invaluable for both musicians and entire humanity. The subject of liberation of fugue parody from distorting blind spot on its true meaning is presented by Bach's advocate with the special warning to avoid following the senseless efforts of Bach's contemporaries to force this giant of intellect to fit their own limitations of primitive Lilliputian standards, or to become the target of laughter for such stubborn absurdity of resentment to change. And the arrival of this publication marks the end of the era of taking advantage of the scarcity of his archival records for making Bach and the performers of his music obligated to show documented proof for his defiance of dogma of his historical period by the scholars of his music, who were unable or unwilling to grasp the score facts evident of Bach's riveting and didactic innovations. Bach's defiant employment of band during his time sonic dissonance facilitated great resemblance of these music metaphors to cognitive dissonance. And it is a great sonic metaphor for creating the soundtrack for comedy of absurd. The process of embodying the elements of cognitive dissonance was made by genius teacher to be fun and pretty simple, thanks to the resonant musical humor metaphors created by Bach for educational purposes of teaching his own children and students the skills of the greatest wisdom of all, the skills of self-reflection and self-mastery, that had been reserved to royal families to attain the most invaluable power of high mental performance through emotional freedom. The author shared the evidence of the measurable impacts on the emergence of generative eureka cognition from Bach's polyphony that had been enjoyed by Rozalina Gutman, that helped to manifest the content to this publication along with multidisciplinary implications. In fact, the epiphanies described in this ebook are the direct result of this profound impact, that ushered non-stereotypical vision for these rather sensational, textbook-changing discoveries with global implications. The ebook provided the evidence of the author's experience of generative eureka cognition resulting from analytically and emotionally balanced engagement with emotionally infused Bach's polyphony. Shared by the author, serious health warning is invaluable, allowing the readers to learn the pain-driven lesson about manifestation of her eureka moments after she was forced to shift into the abolition of the emotional confinement of Bach's music by the heartache, triggered by emotional withholding. And her initially intuitive shift to playing Bach with natural emotional expression, based on natural flow of music, rewarded her with restored clarity for hidden in the plain sight score facts, along with revelation of their true meaning in Bach's music. Much later she learned that the injurious requirement for historically informed performance was evidently not applicable to Bach. This deeply flawed educational standard, applied for Bach's music, was accepted by musicians, due to deliberate underpublicizing and mischaracterization of the archival records for Bach's personal use of dynamically expressive fortepiano. In fact, the replicas of enjoyed by Bach fortepiano with hammer action should have been on display in every museum related to composer and in every college music department for the use at the historically informed performances. And the evidence of this Bach's unearthed tool for resolution of cognitive dissonance will help for Bach's innovations to become the reality. In this context, in addition to empirical self-reflection on this personal experience of collective perception phenomenon, the listing of studies that demonstrated the link of emotional repression with significant health problems reminds that the assurance of compliance with the student's health needs supersedes all other aspirations. And those institutions that represent collective voice of music educators have to duties to address these issues in order to avoid serious liability for the failure to prevent such teaching methods that are known to cause harm to students. Those individuals who handle such compliance issues may be inspired by the chance to honor with resonant policy design for teaching approach to Bach the heroic actions of this prisoner of conscience that were involved in his resistance to zombification in music and beyond. The creation of this unique fugue as a part of larger didactic cycle of well-tempered clavier is linked to very dramatic events endured by Bach. However, the long tradition of politically correct biographical distortions and irrational efforts to shape public opinion by institutionalizing deletion of inconvenient truth about this advocate for humanity. Bach was plunged into suffering from the lifelong witch hunt by cruel character assassination with false stigma of unfair imprisonment into enduring the life as the prisoner of conscience. No, he committed no crime, but instead he was turned into the victim of crime of the false and retaliatory imprisonment. Bach's innovations that led to the pivot in the development of music history were also shaking of status quo of the culture that supported political regime of injustice and cruelty by dominant elite. Majority of fans of genius of all-time Bach, whose music had enriched with millions of dollars corporate records producers, are unaware that during his lifetime he was so badly underpaid that he could not afford to hire effective legal defense in order to disprove false accusations in dire violations of human rights. And the symbolism of remaining injustice towards the profession of musician even during our time, of measurable affluence and prosperity among the society, had not been deemed significant by Bach scholars. The benefits of academic entitlements, and with politically correct publications, came at the cost of the lost sense for what it was like to suffer from walking in Bach's shoes. Instead of representing this cause of Bach, such betrayal of his battle along with forsaking the existential interests of millions of Bach's colleagues musicians contributed to the paradoxical normalization of the violation of musicians' human rights, helping to institutionalize ongoing systemic prosecution by impoverishment of millions of his colleagues musicians of past and present. That's why the Ebook calls for camaraderie of all progressive forces with the causes of existential for humanity elevation of consciousness, initiated by Bach. Driven by cognitive dissonance, mental obstacles to clarity cause seemingly normal people to turn evil and commit utterly shocking cruelty towards others, as well as to act out illogical self-defeat. And Bach empowered the students of his schools, including music educators, to demonstrate the unique intellectual leadership in the society, by sharing with all members of human race the unique and powerful skill of music-embodied resolution of cognitive dissonance through self-deprecating humor. Through this educational curriculum, humanity could gain development of better cognition, making everyone's life more satisfying with less confusion in every part of reality, in every type of social interaction, making more coherent all civic engagements and improving productivity in every type of profession. Readers will witness the fact that the solution for this universal problem was available 3 centuries ago and by now could have transformed and made happier the life of every carrier of the evolutionary young human brain. That is why the author appeals to camaraderie of colleagues to help speed up the global reach of this Bach's tools for brain advancement, at least now, upon its rediscovery and unearthing from the tradition of distortions and resentment to change. Its power to elevate consciousness had become existential, in the face of the global threats caused by dominance of self-defeat consciousness, resulting from cognitive underdevelopment of integrative, whole-brain cognition. Share with us the outcomes of your experience of elevated consciousness upon emotionally infused music of Bach via Contact Us form on the book's website. paradoxofinvisibledissonance.com. Learn more details and get the new ebook at 25% discount now, for the limited time during book launch offered in celebration of camaraderie. See info on how to apply discount e-coupon in the description of the YouTube channel and use it at the website. paradoxofinvisibledissonance.com. Show camaraderie by sending your feedback and testimonials. And remember to include your own publication or project that would be featured to the attention of the global family of Bach's fans. And join Ambassadors for Liberate Bach International campaign.